The next Brooklyn Borough President will have a significant impact on how we continue to view and utilize our streets and open spaces post-pandemic, and they will wield substantial influence on shaping our public realm. This evening, we're honored to host 9 extraordinary leaders who are candidates for Brooklyn Borough President, and they are Robert Cornegy, Kim Council, Kari Edwards, Robert Elstein, Mathieu Eugene, Pearlene Fields, Antonio Reynoso, Joanne Simon, and Bishop Lamore Miller Whitehead. This forum will give us an opportunity to learn about each candidate's vision for bicycling and street safety. And it's being moderated by our own John Orcutt. Take it away, John.
Thanks so much, Ken. Just a couple opening remarks. One, it's fantastic that we're able to get people vying for office to come out to a Bike New York forum. I mean, we had candidates for Manhattan Borough President last night. We had mayoral candidates, including the really front-running folks, come out in March to talk about these things. And it's a sign of the times. Bicycling has it's grown a lot in the last 10 years, but it's really exploded during 2020 as people were staying away from transit, seeking to get out of their apartments, all manner of reasons. But in Brooklyn and in the city outside of Manhattan, we just, and this is a map of the protected bike lanes in Brooklyn. The protected bike lane network really is in its infancy. It's covering, a lot of Manhattan, certainly south of 125th Street now. There are some big holes still, but, it's a lot of white space in Brooklyn and Queens and the Bronx and Staten Island. So we're really going to need to sort of meet the demand, meet people where they're pedaling going forward. So, I think it'll be a really great conversation. A lot of our candidates have made, very proactive statements already about doing more for bikes, getting real for a bike-friendly New York. So let me just, not go on and on, but bring on our first guest, City Council Member Robert Cornegy. He represents the 36th Council District, covering Bedford-Stuyvesant, Crown Heights, since being elected in 2013. He's been a substance abuse and mental health counselor. He was a noted athlete at St. John's playing basketball, some pro experience as well. At least some of the time as a bike commuter, we've seen him at City Hall rolling in. Welcome, Councilmember Cornegy, and candidate for Borough President. You have some materials out there saying that you want to push for a comprehensive borough transportation plan that will include a network of protected bike lanes. So why don't you just start us off? Tell us what that's going to look like to you as BP.
So what it looks like to me is, as an avid bike rider, right? I ride to Borough Hall, not just for the photo ops. I actually ride there regularly. I was on my bike today, trying to navigate and find protected bike lanes so that I could be safe. The one thing that people don't include when they talk about protected bike lanes is the importance of them as it relates to crime prevention and public safety. So I go back far enough to remember when one of the first surveys was being done about transportation alternatives, and they came to me and they asked me, hey, what do you think about the survey? And I said, listen, it's going to be difficult for people in my community who are just getting this idea, their minds wrapped around protected bike lanes, to urge them without including the fact of how important bike lanes are as it relates to public safety and crime prevention. And they said, well, what does that mean? I said, listen, when people are out biking, the lights are on, there's traffic, there's families. That actually is crime prevention. People involved in nefarious behavior do not want to be around where people are bike riding, ringing their bells, baskets on the front and the back. So it really, it gave people a different perspective to look at what bike lanes would mean in their communities and what it meant. In communities of color, characteristically like the one I represent, bike lanes have the narrative around bike lanes was that they were for someone else and they were happening to the community, not for the community. I was able to help them help demonstrate how it actually helped. It is for the community, not only in the ability to create recreation and a beautiful environment, but also to be a part of crime prevention. I think it's that kind of nuanced brand of thinking that I will take to the borough president's office to begin to have that same narrative for the entire borough. There's obviously places in the borough that need to be surveyed to determine which mode of transportation is best for them. In South Brooklyn, it's difficult to bike from South Brooklyn to downtown Brooklyn or to Manhattan. So we need better access to our waterways and better access to the ferries and those kinds of things, and more increased public transportation in those areas. As I transverse the borough, I find that solidly. But from the borough president's perspective, you get to see the borough in its entirety and help make those determinations based on your knowledge and your partnership with local membership, whether it be council members or actual leadership on the community board or the borough board, to really help shape a real true bike plan for the borough, which is my intention.
What do you have any design thoughts? I mean, you noted that you're looking for a safe bike lane today. We see a lot of this kind of, in the last few years, a lot of this sort of plastic sticks bike lanes where you can just drive over those things, and they got to get replaced all the time because they get destroyed so frequently. Any design thoughts? I mean, when I go out, anywhere in Brooklyn, I see all kinds of people riding, but they really flock to like the waterfront greenways, the places that built, Jamaica Bay Greenway, which is looking really good since it's had some work done on it. Those kind of places. How do we sort of pick up the pace in Brooklyn to start filling in some of this white space? Even recent developments like the 4th Avenue bike lane still don't get you up to downtown and the bridges.
But I think that's the moral of the story. How do we get to those places that are protected to ride? How does somebody from Central Brooklyn get to the waterfront or get to downtown Brooklyn and Brooklyn Bridge Park? How do we get there safely? And that's what I think about constantly. I have to find all kinds of creative ways as a person and as a family to get to the Brooklyn Bridge from Central Brooklyn. And I know the routes in my head at this point. And some of them are safe and some of them are not safe, even though they have bike lanes. So there's this really, there's this mapping out that has to be the entire borough mapped out. We've done it in small increments in communities that were forward thinking and wanted to do that, but we haven't really put together a plan that sews together the entire fabric of the borough. That's what it looks like to me. It looks like getting to these access points, what it takes to get to these access points, and kind of sewing them all together and not continuing to work individually with groups. Listen, I was responsible for making sure that we that we enhanced everything from city bike to all kinds of transportation alternatives for Central Brooklyn residents, because quite frankly, in communities of color, we usually we're at the last end of the product life cycle, whether that be protected bike lanes, and so really having a loud voice for communities of color saying, no, we demand to be included in this plan. And other communities, East New York, Brownsville, these communities are demanding an expansion of city bike and to be included in this plan for the borough that centers around reducing our carbon footprint. And by the way, that's not something that was my idea. Most of my legislation and policy and thoughts around climate change are formed at my kitchen table by my 6 kids, demonstrating to me how I should be skating to where the puck is going to be.
Right. I mean, one of the things that's really it struck me for decades looking at the map, because on this map, some of the pieces that jump out to you, like the Shore Parkway, Greenway, Ocean Parkway, those things were built not in the 20th century, but in the 1800s. And they don't connect through Coney Island. And, as I said, Jamaica Bay is getting to be a great place for riding because the Greenway's gotten better. Shirley Chisholm Park is open. DOT starting to build a few connecting lanes in there, but it's still cut off because it doesn't connect through Coney Island to the rest of that Greenway or even to Ocean Parkway. So, any thoughts about greenways? I mean, we've gone very slowly. We've seen a few sections coming into Red Hook and, connecting some of the waterfront further north, but it's just been really glacial. And, just talk a little bit about how you could frame that to get us, to accelerate,
So I frame it by the fact that we are now in a place where connectivity is the order of the day, where we come from an architectural and structural background where it was about exclusivity. And the city of New York and Long Island and even upstate was designed and carved up to separate the different classes. Right. Now we're saying, no, we want those classes together. So we're all in one mindset about making sure that we can have connectivity. That to me is the jumping off point for future designs, for future infrastructure upgrades. You know, I don't want to mention the people's names who were our forefathers who really designed our highways and our parks that were really designed to keep us away from each other and separate from each other. The new mindset includes a urban development plan that is inclusive and connected for us. And I think that's the basis. And the Borough President's Office, with its land use and its zoning powers and capital funding, can absolutely not just participate in it, but I plan on orchestrating it with that as a backdrop, understanding the history of this city and state as it related to its infrastructure and making sure the infrastructure going forward as we pivot and shift. We talk about recovery and resiliency, we talk about new development. All of that has to be inclusive of connecting the city through a series of connected protected bike lanes, but also accessing our greenways and our waterways for that sole purpose, not to separate us and so only certain classes of people can go to the waterfront. But as you see, Brooklyn Bridge Park, if you go down there at any time, every demographic is there because of its access and its access points. We need to create more of that through protected bike lanes. Yeah. And I intend to use our capital funding, our zoning and land use powers to do exactly that.
No, I mean, I feel like we have all these fantastic spots around the borough, but it's hard, you know, a lot of people have never been to Floyd Bennett Field, for example. I mean, it's really huge open space and you should be able to bike there, and you can in some ways, but it's hard to do. And as you say, it's very poorly connected, and you know, and you can get lost and end up.
But if you understand the history, that was intentional. It was intentional to keep the different demographics, ethnicities, and classes separate. We don't want that anymore. We want an inclusive borough. So as a backdrop, it gives, again, the borough president, it's a lot talked about the fact that it's a ceremonious position. This is one of those times, and this is one of those areas where it's absolutely 100% not ceremonious. By using our land use, zoning, and capital budget, we can actually create a streetscape that's not only inclusive, like this is something we should be trying to include, but actually is the fabric, literally and figuratively, of what we want to see in this borough.
So one of the other things that BPs do is shape community boards. Do you think, and you know, there's a sort of common narrative that Brooklyn community boards, a bunch of them, can be where bike lanes go to die. So how can you frame this and use your leadership also, of course, and this idea of your borough plan to frame it for community boards so that it's more of a proactive input rather than, we hate this, we're voting against it.
Right, so I learned that specifically from the district that I represent, and I kind of framed the conversation by saying this was a district that the language that was used was that bike lanes were not, bike lanes were designed and developed to happen to our community, not for our community. Just have a consistent narrative that demonstrates how it's actually for every community, whether it's through public safety, a public safety agenda and narrative, whether it's through a recreation, safety and narrative, but actually doing exactly that and making sure that the community boards have the tools that they need to be able to articulate a message of inclusiveness. And as we begin to shape the boards and think about the new mandates, the charter revision mandates, which include term limits and those kinds of things, making sure there's a constant balance between institutional knowledge and fresh, innovative ideas. The Borough President's Office can 100%, with the charter mandates, the new charter mandates, can absolutely do that through recommendations and sitting people on the community board that speak to that very narrative.
One thing that occurred to me when you were talking about connectivity and really knitting the borough together is that a lot of our subway lines don't reach the end of the borough, City College, et cetera. But one of the hallmarks of a lot of the really sustainable transportation systems you see elsewhere in the world is bikes and trains together. And we don't have a program for that in New York. Is that something you consider in your borough plan?
Not only consider it, that's in the borough plan. And I'm going to tell you why. When we were doing City Bike, and they actually consulted with myself and Restoration Plaza on the placement of the bikes, we deliberately said place them by our small businesses, because when people are coming in using this as a connection hub, they will also access our small businesses. So it's that nuance, the thinking, that actually sews it together. that's another part of the survey that people hadn't thought about, was how this new transportation narrative can actually help undergird and support our small businesses, simply by making sure that these hubs where the city bike, just as an example, is located, that is on commercial thoroughfares, that is next to small businesses. So if you're taking the train and you're getting here and then you need to go north and there's no subway there, you may stop and get a coffee from one of the local coffee houses or other things. And we've actually, to incorporate this transportation alternative idea, come up with a plan in Bedford-Stuyvesant where we do a shared economy weekend, where on Fridays, Uber, Lyft, City Bike, Bird, everybody does discounted rides to bars, lounges, and restaurants on Friday, retail outlets on Saturday, and cultural institutions on Sunday. So that's marrying the shared economy transportation platform to our brick and mortars, thus creating more revenue. And we've done that for 5 years in a row. That's a plan that I'll also take to Borough Hall. And it sounds like it's about small businesses, but it's not. It's about small business transportation and that key word that you mentioned, which is connectivity.
Yeah, I mean, that's the beauty of city transportation equals foot traffic, right? If you organize it well.
If you're strategic about it, 100%.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on that program. I know you've worked with Restoration and City Bike and tracked the usage, and it's been a really nice trajectory.
Yeah. And we want to expand that to East New York and Brownsville. We've demonstrated ridership and usership in a community that, when this idea first came up, the people didn't really believe that it would work. And what we did was not only create an environment where it worked, but there are now Black bike clubs and women's African-American bike clubs. And we cycle with City Bike around the borough with Bed-Stuy as a jumping off point. So we know Brownsville is ready. We know East New York is ready. We know Cypress Hills is ready. So I'm going to take that plan and that incubator that we did, which wasn't just bringing City Bike. There were all of these other components to it, to Borough Hall, and make us a more connected city. So we've got a benchmark for what we believe it looks like for the entire borough.
Yeah, I mean, thinking about these places where people are really riding in big numbers, only a few more of those kind of Fourth Avenue corridors could really change the borough, I think. Councilmember, we're out of our time slot. Robert Cornegy, candidate for Manhattan Borough President. Thank you.
Brooklyn.
Sorry, did I say Manhattan? God. Brooklyn Borough President. I'm sitting here in Brooklyn. Thank you so much for your time and your thoughts on these issues tonight. All the best going forward.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. My team's going to kill me because there were so many things I was supposed to say, but I'm passionate about this, and I can get carried away talking about what we've done and how I'd like to see it be expanded at Borough Hall. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. All right, we are going to plow right ahead to our next candidate for Brooklyn Borough President. Kim Council is a nonprofit executive, has worked in the leadership of several local development organizations. She's a faith leader, a law librarian, a mom, I'm sure many other things. Kim, talk about running for borough president and what you see. I think you've said things about environmental justice, safer cycling, getting the bike lanes that we need for commuting, recreation, working cyclists. Just go ahead and jump right in.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me here today, and thank you for having this forum. As you shared, I am a mom, a nonprofit executive, and associate minister. I'm running for Brooklyn Borough President to level the playing field and looking to bring equity to the borough of Brooklyn. When it comes to bike safety, that definitely is something that is paramount, is very important to me. And I think there's a lot of work that we can do around the existing infrastructure to improve biking across the borough, biking across the borough in certain thoroughfares. So I've been having a lot of conversations with my team around, what the existing infrastructure looks like and things that we could do to make it safer to bike in Brooklyn.
Are there any particular projects in those conversations that jump out to you?
Yeah, actually, we were having a conversation not too long ago. I mean, I definitely want to see more protected bike lanes. As someone who does, I do a lot more driving than biking. So I definitely get very, very nervous because of the blind spots, and want to make sure that, there's protection for people who are on those vehicles. And now we're seeing more people, driving the bike delivery, the mopeds and things of that nature. So there are a lot more of those types of vehicles on the road. And we want to make sure, so that we're doing things to educate drivers, and make sure that they're aware of what's going on, and that they have the attitude that we have to share the road. We want to also look at the transportation deserts and make sure that we're making connections and creating more hubs around those transportation deserts, and with bike share programs and things of that nature. We also, we also want to, right now, it seems piecemeal the way that they've looked at, bike planning for the Borough of Brooklyn. So in some areas you'll have like the bike icon and the little arrows, and there'll be those little, those plastic dividers. But, I'd actually like to see, like I said, more protection for bikers, as opposed to those little things. We also want to color code the bike lanes. I think, sometimes they're green, and sometimes, you see, like I said, those demarcations. So I think around, like, on the Brooklyn Bridge, it's the paint is faded. We need to repaint the Brooklyn Bridge so that we know. I know that they're supposed to be creating a path specific for the bikes, but right now on the bridge where you have people walking in bike lanes, there needs to be some paint there. I think the color green, we should go with that. People respond to colors a little bit better. Even in the streets, we need to see that on Eastern Parkway, on those major thoroughfares. I was having this huge debate. My campaign manager is an avid biker. She has an e-bike and she goes all around. And so I wanted to actually look at some of the major thoroughfares, and see where we could create better infrastructure. But she was like, no, we just need to, fix the paint on the existing structure. So I'm bottom up, not top down. So I want to have more people around the table when we're having that conversation about what needs to happen. And we were also looking at the, like I see you have the map behind you, and I know you were talking about that earlier to Councilman Cornegy. And I think that the way things are laid out, we haven't done it in a comprehensive way. So I'd like to use the borough board to bring all of the transportation committees of all of the community boards together to begin to look at, our neighborhoods touch, but we have different priorities. But if we sit down together and have a conversation about what you're doing over here, what you're doing over here, and what the overarching plan for, transportation safety in Brooklyn should be, I think that's something that I would do I know that's something that I would do as borough president.
Yeah, no, I mean, you make a lot of good points. I mean, something that doesn't come up that often, but if you can really see where bikes are supposed to be on the street, like a protected bike lane that's really protected and not like half full of parked cars, it can be less stressful for the drivers, right? But if the bike lane design changes every few blocks, it can be more confusing. And yeah, we do have a very, really crazy welter of designs. You mentioned Eastern Parkway, and you can see on the map, it kind of just ends out in the, in the middle of the borough. And you could really connect Brownsville and other places up there. There's some big streets like Rockaway Parkway that have a painted bike lane now, but it's a massive street. You could definitely put a protected bike lane on there. And I think then really increase the utility of that nice greenway on Eastern to do some of those.
I've tried to ride my bike. I used to live in Brownsville. Now I live in Cypress Hills, and I was trying to ride my bike to Prospect Park. I didn't feel safe. I was very nervous. So I think we have to do a much better job of protecting bikers.
No, I mean, go ahead. Sorry.
And again, drive home that education to drivers that we have to share the road.
Yeah, I mean, it was no accident that we had all these people come out and start biking when traffic was very low last spring. And hopefully some of them will keep doing it. But you're right. I mean, it's the cycling system today is not for most people because, it can freak you out to be in car traffic. And we at Bike New York train people to do that. But it's still, it's still not the easiest thing to get them over that hump. So, as borough president, do you, are you thinking about, your ability to shape community boards? I mean, you talked about bringing the committees together. What about, who you put on the community boards and who you sort of let through the process? There's a narrative that community boards are, heavily overrepresent drivers. They tend to be older people who are trying to sort of keep change at bay. What do you think about that and and your role as as sort of the the keeper of that process.
As the non-politician seeking to shake things up, I definitely want to make sure that every voice is represented. And I think it's important, because again, like if I'm not a bike rider, I'm not thinking about the things that are priority to bike riders. And so I will be actively recruiting diverse people to sit on these community boards. I'm even thinking about staggering the terms. I know, like, Councilmember Cornegy was talking about term limits and things of that nature. We don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, because we do want to make sure that there's some continuity,
Right.
But we do need to get some new voices at the table. I also want to create a junior board of just for young people that would mirror the existing community board. So bring young people in and begin to train them, and they ride bikes a whole lot more than us. But I mean, the borough is changing, and so we want to make sure that all voices are at the table. And so as opposed to me, sitting appointing, I want the community involved. I want the boards to represent the diversity of each one of the neighborhoods that they're elected to serve, that they're selected to serve.
Any further thoughts on bike parking, greenways?
I think, we were looking at the map, and we were looking at, the areas where there are no, where the transportation ceases. Where the train stop here, like look over in Canarsie where the L train stops here, and you might have some buses that go out here,
Right.
but like we can put those bike sharers there, so that they can serve as up. And I also want to, like this, I know that you're not interested in ferries and stuff like that, but I want to expand the ferry.
If bikes can connect to it, it's good. I mean,
Yeah, so
I have a ferry dock in my neighborhood, and there's a city bike station right there. And and there's bike racks, et cetera.
Exactly. I mean, like when I travel around to other neighborhoods, like when I go to Roosevelt Island or Manhattan, you see that, like there are things that are put in place that are convenient for certain neighborhoods. And we want to make sure that there is equity across the board. And not the assumption that because we're in an underserved neighborhood that we don't want to ride our bikes and that we don't want to be protected. So we have to make sure that we're looking at the entire map. We're looking at street planning, we're looking at community planning, and we're bringing all of those things together. Whether it's expanding, like I said, out into neighborhoods that are underserved, and using the bikes to connect people from one mode of transportation to another mode of transportation, and also looking at how people are using their bikes. So some people are using them for recreation, and some people are using them for work, and some people are using them as their their mode of transportation. And so we want to make sure that we're thinking about that as we're planning for the future.
Fantastic. I don't have other questions, Kim, but if you want to, add any further thoughts, we have a couple more minutes. Thoughts on land use or how bikes connect to the rest of your policy agenda?
Again, I want to make sure that all voices are heard. I want to make sure that we have everybody at the table. I want to make sure that we're healthier. I mean, there's so many different reasons why we would have, we want to have comprehensive planning around, bicycle lanes and bikes. There's so many different things that we can do, and we have to start thinking outside of the box and not continue to do things the same way. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting different results. And it's in addition to it being something that's recreational, it's also something I said that, as I said before, even during the pandemic, where you have all of these companies that popped up, DoorDash, Uber, that they're not just using cars, but they're using bicycles. So we're changing the way we do business. We're changing the way we move around. We want to think more about the economy and that type of justice, and not the environment, and that type of justice, and reducing our carbon footprint. So we've got to do a lot. So I'm gonna be focusing on educating drivers. I'm gonna be focusing on creating a stronger bike infrastructure within the borough. I'm gonna be focused on creating bike lanes. Protected bike lanes, like I've seen in other neighborhoods. I've seen them do it, and I know we can do it in Brooklyn. We are the best borough, so we definitely deserve to have the best of everything. And so again, and also looking at a lot of those bike share programs and having conversations in all of the communities and making sure that that no one is underrepresented, but that we have equity all over the borough.
Fantastic. Kim Council, candidate for Brooklyn Borough President, thank you for your time tonight. Thank you for your thoughts. Thank you for your advocacy around bikes. And all the best going forward in the campaign.
Thank you, thank you. And that's right, Rob was running for Manhattan Borough President. Let's let people know.
Yeah, good one. All right. Okay, without delay, let's bring on Kari Edwards. Kari Edwards has worked for elected officials, nonprofit organizations. He was recently Vice President for External Affairs at Brookdale Hospital. He's a campaigner for housing, healthcare, and workforce development. Kari, welcome. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you guys for having me.
We've seen huge increases in cycling in the city, over the long term, also over the short term in the last, 12 months or so, maybe a little bit longer. How would you use the office of Borough President to facilitate that, to increase the benefits of cycling, and to make us safer on the streets, because it's still pretty rough in some places?
Yeah, well, again, thank you guys for having me. I mean, cycling in Brooklyn has been around for more years than I've been born. And I'm really happy to see now that it's taking a new step forward in terms of kind of making it a main means of transportation for our community, either through resiliency, environmental protection, but just really trying to get around quick enough. I really appreciate, even though it's towards his last term, the mayor putting together more protected bike lanes. And so I had some ideas on how that would work. I was looking at a lot of the stuff going on in Washington, D.C., and how do you truly protect bikers in terms of their lanes from cars and even in some cases pedestrians. So I'd like to really see some kind of like textured rubbered lanes. One that it kind of prevents some of the cars from jumping over and keeping like riders safe in their way. But also I'd like to see, as Borough President, an expansion of bike opportunities in other communities. I'm a little disappointed that, doing my research, especially for this forum, that, I worked in Brownsville for 8 years, East New York, East Brooklyn, and the amount of city bike opportunities, city bike kiosks are maybe null and void out there in those communities. So I really like to see a balance in terms of bringing that same joy, that same opportunities into Brownsville, East New York. Outside of Brookdale Hospital, we had a couple bike lanes that were never really taken care of. When they repainted the streets, they never did those things over. Really rest in peace to Mr. Smiley, who owned the Brownsville bike shop for 50 plus years. And, without his advocacy, his taking a chance on this new means of transportation back when we were younger, there wouldn't have been, abilities to have that. So as Borough President, I'd like to, again, maintain what we have, expand the safety for riders, but also really just expand those opportunities in other communities.
You have specific streets or corridors in mind in terms of what you're thinking about with regard to protected bike lanes? Yeah,
really just where we have high car traffic. I'll again reference Rockaway Parkway, where we tend to have a concentration of small business or business corridors. There really needs to be those heavier protected bike lanes, because whether it's our messengers, whether it's just, fathers wanting to ride their children down the block, whenever we get into those high corridor areas, the Flatbush Avenues, the Myrtle Avenues, the Rockaway Parkways, we tend to see that those issues, if they're not built up and protected, kind of like what I'm hoping for in terms of the textured separation, you tend to find, more casualties and more issues going there. So I have a lot of corridors in Brooklyn that I would like to see these protected bike lanes, these really distinguished bike lanes. I know DC has a red, yellow, and green. That's something groovy that we could try to, but of course we're a little more dense than DC. But in this respect of creating opportunities for folks to ride safely.
One of the problems we've had in recent years is a lot of the new protected bike lanes look like this picture behind me, where they're sort of set off with these flimsy sticks, and they're very easy to run over, and they get destroyed a lot. And you know, in some places we've seen a little bit more robust stuff, but then the lane is still wide that cars still just drive up into it. So,
Right.
you know, so you're looking at, you know, and I've seen some of the DC stuff where they have those bolt down curbs. And they do set it up a little better.
Yeah, I mean, they're called armadillo.
Yeah.
It's funny. Yeah, so kind of having that, because what that has done, you know, and what I've seen in DC, what it does is really prevents, you know, a driver doesn't want to harm their car, you know, even more that they want to harm a biker. And once you hit that thing, it's kind of like, oh, it's a wake up. It's kind of like, you know, the new cars have their, if you're going outside of your lane. But I think that's what's important. I think that's really, because the sticks can be kicked over, the cones can be kicked over, you know, even we really need to have something more substantial, more visibly appealing, and more of a deterrent for cars to respect that.
So you've written some material on community board reform. So can you talk, you know, and you know, as I was talking with Councilmember Cornegy, you know, there are some Brooklyn community boards where the reputation is that's where bike lanes go to die. So how do you sort of frame things or use your leadership to change that? And how would you use the borough president's power with community boards to, you know, to sort of get things on a more proactive direction?
Yeah, I mean, I think we, you know, as our borough, you know, evolves, right? We have to think in broader strokes. And so part of my community board reform is to create more diverse community boards, but diversity in terms of not just, you know, cultural diversity, but diversity in terms of how a community is built. You know, we need our teachers, we need our faith-based leaders, you know, we need our unions, we need the people that really make up a community to be part of these community boards. And the other caveat to that is that if the borough president gets 150 applications per community board a year, I want to bring back the directive community boards, because Marty Markowitz used to have it. Eric Adams got rid of it. But also I want to create a way where the same way that you guys are screening me is the same way that we screen members of the community boards. So if you know, Mr. Edwards is coming to be a member of the community board, I'm going to send his application into that particular community board, create a diverse screening process of real community stakeholders, and have them screen, let them ask the right questions, let them know what's important, and then give that recommendation to me. It's almost like selecting a jury, you know, jury selection, but it really has to protect the institution of, one, our community boards, but two, just the institution of our communities.
Thanks. So would, you know, car owners, non-car owners, different ways of, you know, people who get around different ways, would that be one of the things you'd look at?
Yeah, I mean, and definitely, because again, the mode of transportation, you know, it's as old as life itself, right? You know, you start off with, you know, donkeys to now we have cars, and the reality of it is that we don't give enough deference to the wide range of transportation. You have people who have to wait for the bus. You have people who walk. You have people who are on bicycles. You know, now we have scooters. You know, so when I have this diverse group really sitting down, those questions have to be answered, because you can't come in and be like, I'm just a car person, and you're living in a community, you know, where bikes run prevalent. And so, you know, I'm really excited about that process. I'm really excited. You know, I'm going to get a lot of pushback, I'm sure. But I think it's really in time that we really have true community input throughout, you know, all of the realms, specifically transportation modes. Yeah.
Speaking of the different modes, you know, not everybody wants to ride from, you know, Canarsie up to Manhattan, or from, you know, Bay Ridge across to, you know, East New York. So what about connecting bikes into the other parts of our transportation network? You know, when we look at, you know, like Northern Europe, you go to a train station, there's like thousands of bikes parked, because that's how people get to it. And it means the train station can serve a much broader area than just, you know, what the walking distance is.
Yeah, it's the park and ride concept that, you know, we've been using for years, except it's a car, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, case in point, I'll give you guys a little story. I was DMX, the rapper who passed away. I was supposed to speak at his memorial service in the Barclays Center, but we were doing an event in Brownsville. And so I got in the car and literally got stopped probably somewhere around Nostrand Avenue.
Right.
And I just jumped out the car and I'm running because I was supposed to get there at 4:00. And then my son calls me and he's just like, he's like, "What are you doing, Dad?" I'm like, "Well, I'm running to Barclays Center." He's like, "Why don't you stop and get a city bike?" And I was like, wow, I didn't think about that. And I literally stopped and jumped on a city bike. And so, so that I think is the, epitome of the conversation of Canarsie is so far from downtown Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Let's get to one point and then continue to rest. And really environmentally, it would save so much. If we can't truly get fully electric buses on our roads, it would really save a lot to allow somebody that mode of transportation. So I'm really excited to see a lot of the things coming up. I would really love to see more manual bikes again, though, more of the pedal bikes. I know there's a lot of electronic bikes and scooters, but the way I kept in shape was riding bikes all over Brooklyn at one point in my life. But yes, yeah.
I mean, there's hybrids, pedal assist, and, there's lots of people still pedaling. But I mean, look, if you live a mile from the train station in Canarsie, then it's even further to get anywhere on that train in terms of time. So if we could add a big bike parking lot there that was secure, it would be fantastic, and we'd get more subway ridership as well.
Yeah, and I think there's that equity conversation does come back, right? Because Brownsville, East New York, Canarsie, Sheepshead Bay, they are transportation deserts. But that's what I also like, in my earlier comment, to see us really expand that opportunity for bikes in those communities, to really see that these kiosks come about. Because really, outside of coming, a little more north, you don't see that in South Brooklyn, and it's really, discouraging to a lot of those community members.
I mean, I've seen a huge amount of biking now in Jamaica Bay and Shirley Chisholm Park, but it's not well connected to the rest of the city. So,
Right.
We need those routes. I've always wanted to see the Greenway built through Coney Island so that the Shore Parkway, Jamaica Bay were one route, and you never had to get off the bike path.
Right. Right.
How about that? Is that project for the BP?
Listen, I have no problem putting some money towards that, and that work with the city council members. But yeah, and it's exciting time because, again, I had stopped riding because I have 3 children, so I needed a car. But the days of like leaving my house and riding my bike all the way to Reese Beach, up Flatbush Avenue was great, and we need more of that. And it's specifically with our children being at home with no real activity to do, my son took a while to learn how to ride a bike. And I'm like, what do you mean? This is how we grew up. This is our mode of transportation. But these are the things that I think we really have to address, and we have to kind of do it on a really equal plane to make sure that all communities have the same opportunity.
Yeah, well, and it's very rare to find like a kid-friendly street for biking.
Yep.
In Brooklyn these days. And that should change. I mean, one thing the pandemic showed everybody was we need open space in our neighborhoods. And, I've talked to DOT about it and said, look, you can talk about transportation networks all you want, but if you go and say, here's a place you could go safely with your kids, you can bring in a whole new audience for this kind of thing.
Right. And we would love it. I mean, I have a 12-year-old son who's my size, and having that opportunity to ride with your child is something that my dad did with me. So it's really important. And it really, like I said, it keeps families together.
Kari Edwards, closing thoughts on bikes and Brooklyn?
Listen, Brooklyn, I grew up in Brooklyn. I was born in, Brooklyn Jewish Hospital many, many years ago. It's the borough that I love. It's the borough that I've watched evolve in great ways. But bikes have always been constant, and really having bikes being always constant, we have to, again, protect those institutions that are there. And like I said, from my borough presidency standpoint, I would really like to see expanded into, communities that normally don't have the same opportunity, and really to also protect for those communities that do. So I really would push for protected bike lanes, but I also really love to push for the expansion of bikes into communities that are socioeconomically impoverished as well. So I really appreciate you guys having me on. This has been fun. I know Antonio Reynoso's coming on later. He's probably gonna have his bike on the back of his thing, so don't let him mess with you guys like that. But thank you guys for your opportunity tonight.
Hey, thanks for being with us, and best of luck heading forward into the campaign.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Our next guest and candidate is Robert Elstein. Robert is a teacher, artist, theater person, and dad. He's the founder of Beautify Brooklyn. And I'm sure we'll hear more about that. Robert, you're a candidate for Borough President in Brooklyn. Tell us what you would do for bike transportation, bike recreation, bike safety on our streets.
All right, thanks so much. It's great to be here. Nice to meet you, John, and everybody. I think that we need to do a lot, actually. I think that in terms of bike safety, I think that the speed cameras that we have in the school zones, could potentially be expanded to other areas with dedicated bicycle lanes. I think that when there's a speeding ticket issued, we need to find a way that the drivers actually have points attributed to their license. In terms of bike lanes, I think that we need to develop more dedicated bicycle lanes and find a way of interconnecting them into a network. I think the Brooklyn Greenway is really an amazing initiative, and I wish that it was further along, if it progressed further. But one of the things that I like about it is that it connects two different issues. So, you might have people that are passionate about both, but you might have people that are just passionate about, having more open green spaces. So to connect them with the movement of bicyclists, that I think is, going to be beneficial to everyone. So that, that's something that I'm really focused on, is using the borough president's authority for land use to develop green spaces and not apartment buildings. But I noticed that, we have bicycle lanes that travel north and south, and we don't have nearly as many that travel east and west. So, in particular, in central or southern Brooklyn, like Ditmas Avenue or Avenue P, those are really great thoroughfares that go far east and west that would really open up neighborhoods and connect them in a lot of different ways. Also, Flatbush Avenue is really difficult to navigate. Greenwood Cemetery and Holy Cross Cemetery, basically, if you're a cyclist and you're trying to, get around, you hit one of these cemeteries, and all of a sudden you're going to go for many blocks without a dedicated bicycle lane. And Greenwood in particular is really dangerous. So, if I'm traveling to Sunset Park on my bike from Flatbush, I've really got to figure out the time of day, it's not, because there is a dedicated bike lane for part of Greenwood Cemetery, but the parts that don't have it are it's like you have to kind of ride on the sidewalk or find another way to get there. So I read Justin Krebs' piece. He's cycling around his whole district in the 39th district, and I think that's a really great idea. Also, Edwin Raymond has done a tour of the 40th. So I think that, it's important for the candidates to get out and kind of survey the landscape. And, that my bicycle was really, my ticket to freedom during the pandemic, especially last summer. So I've gotten to experience what it's like, and, going on Google Maps, and you're just like, there is no way to really get there safely. And you end up walking your bike a lot of the way.
So as borough president, how would you sort of start to address that? How would you use that office, which doesn't have a whole lot of, sort of defined roles, to, sort of take this on?
Well, I see that I think maybe the most important aspect of the office is the bully pulpit. And, we're advocates for any movement within Brooklyn that it potentially is linked to our agenda. I see a tremendous ability for neighborhood cleanup groups to collaborate with community gardens. And that's, helped, develop the CCC, this new stimulus program from the city, Community Cleanup Corps, where they're going to hire 10,000 people. So I think if you can connect the different movements that are aligned, you just have so much more bargaining power and, so much more attention. And, if you can get 30 people to show up at your event instead of 10, it's just, it really builds some momentum. So that's what I would advocate is, bring all of the green advocates together along with the community gardens and the advocates for cleaning up the neighborhoods, of which I'm one of them, and and say what successes have we had, and what can we work on together. Brooklyn Greenway really connects the fact that the Naval Cemetery is like a part of that project. So we can create other green spaces like that. I also imagine maybe creating an app where that's specifically for touring the city via bicycle, and it has all of the bike lanes, but also has all of the places where you can park the bikes. I mean, one of the major issues with City Bike is that even though it's expanded cycling, there hasn't really been an effort to expand parking. So if you're not, it's almost like they want to create an incentive for you to use City Bike and not have your own bike in some cases. So yeah, I think to have one app that had everything, as well as all of the green spaces that you could travel to, would essentially make cycling more accessible, and something that would be easier to promote. But yeah, that the green spaces and cycling and all forms of recreation would be something I'd be advocating for constantly.
So you've talked also about the city's need for a really robust climate agenda. Is this all part of that?
Yeah, absolutely. And also you can connect so many things to climate change, because really that's like our survival. And so in one forum I was asked, do I connect having a government network for Wi-Fi as part of a Green New Deal? And I had never thought to connect those two, but it makes a lot of sense, right? Like, this is something that's necessary. I think if the people want something, they should get it. So like, we don't need to have major media companies running our communications. This is something that the government can provide. I'm sorry, I guess I forgot the first part of the question, or
No, it's okay. I was just asking about how you connected these issues to climate.
Oh yeah,
Since it's one of your issues. I mean,
right.
But yeah, people should get what they want, but people want different things, right? Some people want lots of free car parking, and some of us want protected bike lanes, and it's people's job in government to sort that out and decide.
Right. But to some degree, we can have all of that. For example, we can have more protected bike lanes, right? I mean, that, obviously you need to study, what are the intersections and what are the specifics, blocks that need to have those. You don't necessarily need to have it, for like several miles on a corridor. You could have it on, a block here, a block there, where there's a real problem. I think also, in terms of parking, right, a lot of parking could be done structurally. I mean, some land use could be used to develop parking lots. On a street like Flatbush Avenue, it's really impossible just to even cross the street as a pedestrian. So I would consider whether there are certain thoroughfares or stretches that would be car free altogether, and that includes parking. So open the streets completely, not every street, but certain streets, maybe on certain days, and pilot a program. But yeah, I mean, our over-reliance on cars, this is developed by Robert Moses decades and decades ago, and the most powerful person in the entire state. We can reimagine what our future looks like, but it's going to unfortunately take decades to get there, to kind of re-envision what our landscape could be.
So I'm sort of thinking about this since you've written a lot about schools and school governance. If you ride a bike in a place like Denmark or Holland or certain parts of Germany, you get a vibe that like even a lot of the car drivers understand what it's like to be on a bike. And part of that is that they're all trained as cyclists, as kids. And so in New York, we have a program that Bike New York has developed and has helped move into schools, but it's only in like 20 odd middle schools out of like, hundreds of middle schools in the city. So, thoughts about how we expand that. I mean, we've helped to fund it, and DOT has funded it somewhat. Board of Ed, Department of Ed hasn't funded it, but even though they've hosted it in, a small number of schools.
Yeah.
But it gets kids on bikes, and it trains them, to deal with, our mean streets to some degree.
I want to say your questions are so layered and thought-provoking that it's like I start to think about one thing and then you say another thing, and I kind of lose my train of thought. So I'm
That's all
sorry
right.
if I don't like address your exact, direct.
It's all right. I'll bring it back if we need to.
But yeah, okay, thanks. I appreciate that. So, I've been at Edward R. Murrow High School for 16 years. And, I think that really what we need to do is make schools more fun and relevant. Bloomberg eliminated all of the vocational high schools, all the vocational programs. I mean, some of them have been brought back. But, they've basically decided that, all students need to be college bound. And that's not necessarily in the best interest of the children or of our society. So I think that we need to reimagine schools altogether. We need to break down the departments and have teachers start to work together from different departments. We can bring teaching artists into the schools, and we can also have mandated curriculum that students have the opportunity to learn how to ride a bicycle by the time they graduate from 8th grade or 12th grade. And the same goes for swimming. We have enough city pools that the DOE could coordinate a program where any child who wanted to, over the course of 5 years between kindergarten and 5th grade, 6 years, would be able to have that time. And the same could happen for bicycling. And I think the problem is not funding, it's a lack of imagination. The schools have become more and more homogenous, even though they may be culturally diverse. One school to another has the same expectations. Murrow used to be a really unique high school. It was an alternative high school developed in the 70s during the fiscal crisis when the city needed new ideas. Maybe we need another fiscal crisis to kind of get the creative juices flowing or something. But, over the years, Murrow has become more and more of a kind of, conformist. And I really blame Bloomberg for that. And unfortunately, de Blasio hasn't helped at all. So we need to end mayoral control of schools. And we need to give the communities a lot more opportunity to influence the direction of the city.
Is that school at all bikeable for the students?
Actually, yeah, it is actually. I've been counting the number of bicycles that were parked there. So for a while I was bicycling there every day. And when I started, there were 7 or 8 bicycles. And then, over time it grew up to like 20 or 30 bicycles. They added, what happened was we have, a few bike parking spots, but then, there's benches. So, a lot of the students were, locking into the benches. I would say of the 30 or 40 bicycles, it's about 15 are for staff members and 15 are for students. And, it's a school of 4,000. But you mentioned, Europe and just kind of the knowledge of drivers. I think that culturally it's something that we can address. And that's something I could use with the bully pulpit is, encourage students to ride to school. I plan to visit a different school every day on my way to Borough Hall if I'm elected. So that could be something I would advocate for with the principals and ask them, how many bike parking spots do you have here? Can you, talk to the school construction authority about possibly developing or designating a section of the school property? We have a huge, not huge, but sizable parking lot for, faculty, parking at Murrow, that they can designate even more space for bikes if there's a demand.
Yeah, bike parking is definitely an issue that until very recently has kind of fallen off the map for this administration. And, the bike rack installations were way down. But let me ask you about one thing the borough presidents do have power to do, which is to appoint community board members. And I don't know how many dealings you've had with community boards, but they can be a source of a lot of friction when it comes to street design changes. So what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, well, I'll speak to bring me back to like my criteria for community board members, if you don't mind, because I want to just say the community boards are totally dysfunctional. I think that's by design. I think that they're used as a means of those elected politicians to pretend that the community has real input. I think that they should be kind of like creative think tanks where, we're brainstorming and we're actually determining and generating ideas for the city to possibly adopt. We aren't just like voting on proposals that the city is giving to us or making modifications to them. I'm in community board 40. We don't even have a land use committee in our community board. that's a really crucial committee, and it doesn't even exist. There's all, you know, we don't have a committee for senior citizens either. It should be mandated that every community board have every committee that exists. You know, furthermore, the community board committees don't have any term limits for their membership. So, and they don't need to be members of the community board itself. Right. So it's just ripe for corruption. I think that it's a way of suppressing the community to have real influence. I think I shouldn't be appointing the community board members. You know, as I heard Kari before I came on, none of us should be interviewing anyone to appoint to a community board. They should be elected, but you know, we have to create that system first, and they should be compensated. And you know, the mayor, basically the mayor's job is impossible. Once Bloomberg took schools in, you know, under the umbrella, it became impossible. So the best we could hope for is just an average mayor who kind of does a decent job. Take away the control of the schools, make the job more manageable, give the community the ability to determine the direction of the city. I think that's a solution. Every candidate in every race, and not just talking about my opponents, but practically every race, all they want to talk about is how do we fix the problems within the current system? I don't hear anyone, aside from maybe Paperboy Prince, talking about like changing the system, you know? And Paperboy Prince is running a novelty campaign, and it's very important. But we need like viable candidates at every level saying the problem is not that we don't have enough affordable housing. The problem is that we don't have any affordable housing laws for over 50 years, and we need to develop that legislation. You know, ULURP has been a disaster, but we can use ULURP to fund green spaces. You know, so I envision, you know, with development, currently ULURP, there's no environmental expectation for a property. So a developer can propose whatever they want. It doesn't matter what the environment is. In the middle of so reform ULURP, require that the apartments be larger than just one bedrooms, that they could be for working families, which are those who need the apartments the most. And also require that any new development, if it is going to be exempt for 30 years from property taxes, that it be 100% carbon neutral. And the developer is also contributing to a green fund so that we can fund projects like the Brooklyn Greenway and protected designated bike lanes, and, you know, and be able to give people everything they want.
Robert Elstein, candidate for Borough President. Robert, thanks for sharing your thoughts tonight. Interesting talking with you. Again, thanks for your time. We will see you.
You're so welcome. It was a pleasure.
We will see you on the street.
All right, thank you.
And we will see you in the campaign. Okay, we are back, and our next candidate this evening is City Council Member Mathieu Eugene. Mathieu Eugene represents the City Council in the 40th District, which covers parts of Crown Heights, East Flatbush, Kensington, Midwood, Prospect Park South, and Prospect Lefferts Gardens. He is a medical doctor, a master of martial arts. He was the first Haitian American elected official in New York City when he was elected in 2007. Welcome, council member, candidate for Borough President. You know, we're Bike New York. We're looking at a lot more bike riding in the city, not that many more protected bike lanes. So let us know how you would approach that and improve bike safety on our streets as BP.
Thank you so very much, John, and thank you to all your members, the members of this great organization. Let me say that as a medical doctor, and also as somebody, somebody.
That's all right.
I'm sorry about that.
I know it's a busy life.
Yeah, I thought that I put it off, but okay. Thank you so very much, John. Again, and I apologize for that. You know, as a medical doctor and also as somebody who practice sport and who have been teaching sport in several countries, including Haiti, Mexico, Europe, and United States, I am also so supportive to this movement because riding bike, there's so many benefits, physical and mental benefits. And, when I had my children, my first son, as a matter of fact, the first thing that I do when he was able to do it is to buy a bicycle for him. When I had my second child also, I did the same thing. And I used to go to the park with them, riding bicycle, because that's what I used to do when I was in my beautiful island, Haiti. We used to ride bicycle. And as I said, there are so many benefits, by riding bicycle. I think as a board president, what I will have to do, number one, to make sure that the bicyclists, they are safe riding their bikes. It is the moral obligation of government, of the society, to protect life. There are so many people lost their life just riding bike, cycling. But I will do everything in my power to make sure we have safer street and safer bike lane. And I will also bring on the table people with expertise and people who know about exactly biking and also the danger they are facing in the street when they are riding bike. And I will create a task force to make sure we study how we can make our street and our bike lane safer.
Do you have any specific projects that you're interested in? I mean, you look at the map of Brooklyn here, and those are the protected bike lanes, but it's mostly white space. And some of these go back to, not even the 20th century, but the 19th century with regard to Ocean Parkway and parts of Eastern Parkway too. We just haven't made that much progress connecting Brooklyn with protected bike lanes. Do you have any particular thoughts?
You know what? There are many things that we have to do. And I want to say that no one person can do everything. No one person can make the necessary changes to make the streets and the bike lane safe. It will take all of us. I mean, when I say all of us, number one, bring on the table the people who are using the bike, the people who are there every single day, facing the danger, facing the difficulty, and knowing exactly what they need. And also we will bring people with expertise to make this study, to design safer and better street. It is a very big task. And I cannot pretend that I will do this or that to make the street safer and to resolve the situation. I will make sure that I bring together people who have the knowledge, people who have the expertise to redesign our street, to make sure we take the necessary step to make the street and the bike lane safer. Let's put it this way. If we go back to 1910, Brooklyn or New York is a different place.
Oh yeah.
We had fewer cars, we have less people, but now we have more people, more cars, more people riding bicycle. We have to reimagine our system. That's what I'm going to do, to make sure that we bring, one of the things that I want to put emphasis on that. Most of the time when we in government, we are taking decisions, we don't bring on the table of decision the people who are affected, the people who are concerned about what we are going to take decision on. The first thing that I will have to do, bring the cyclists together. Say, guys, come together with us, educate us, help us take the right decision to protect you, help us take the right decision to make Brooklyn and also our street a safer place for bicyclists.
Let me mention one project. It's actually in your council district that I've been concerned about, which is there's a plan for a protected bike lane on Parkside Avenue. And that's good, we want that. But part of the lane is only going to be 6 feet wide for two-way bike traffic. So we're very worried about that because that's just too skinny for two-way traffic. So anyway, I just want to put that on your radar since we're talking. We want DOT to widen it to 8 feet or more. Just because, look, we've seen on Prospect Park West, we're seeing like 300 to 400 bikes an hour now during the pandemic because people are out using it. If you build it, they will come, and they're coming on Prospect Park West, just around the corner from Parkside. I think Parkside will also get a huge amount of bikes. So let's make sure that bike lane is wide enough when we first build it, not have a bunch of people crashing into each other. So I just wanted to mention that as a thing since it's there. It's on the edge of your district and Councilmember Landers, but I wanted to mention that.
I'm glad that you mentioned that. I have supported also the back lane, creation on Flatbush Avenue,
Right.
close to Prospect Park. But I'm glad that you mentioned that. That's exactly what I was saying. What you mentioned on Parkside, it is something that should be studied, that should be resolved, not only for the bicycle, but for the community.
Right.
Not only the bicycle, the other people also, they are facing the danger. As you said, the street is too narrow. Now they have to come together to make the study and see how we can make these streets safer and better for everybody. It is a community safety issue. And I'm glad that you mentioned that, and I will keep that in my mind.
So, one of the things that's been difficult with expanding the bike lanes in Brooklyn is, there are some community boards who are just against them, or, there have been very big fights over fairly small pieces of bike lanes. So, you will, as borough president, you will appoint the community boards. I don't know what you're thinking. What are you thinking in terms of changing how you select them, how you would approach sort of the community boards, and whether you would, provide some leadership there in terms of saying, look, we need to be bike friendly. We can't just have people getting killed on our streets or not. I'm curious what you think.
Listen, I've been a member of the community board 14 for many years before I was elected.
Right.
And one of the things that I say that I will make sure that we have community boards that are very diverse.
Mhm.
When I say diverse, with people from all ethnic background, all expertise, people who can bring something on the table. Let's say, for example, there's a big issue right now. There's a big movement right now, all over our city, all over our borough, cycling. And the people who are using bicycle, the people in the community, they have the right also to be part of the conversation and to be on the table of this decision. So that means I will make sure that we have people who have interest also in terms of cycling to be in the part of the community board, because it doesn't make sense that we have a body that will take decision on the life of people and our way of life, and we don't have other people who represent their community. So that means the people in the community should be also the people who are riding bikes. They should be part of the community board also. And one of the things that I want to say, we have to do that also through education and awareness. People should understand cycling is a wonderful thing that keep our ecosystem safe, no pollution. And this is a good sport. People will benefit from that because listen, cardiovascular system, respiratory system, and it is free, it's not expensive,
Right.
and it is safe. We have to educate people to embrace this movement. Because I'm telling you honestly, from a medical point of view, this is a great sport. I think that could be also prevention for medicine. And I believe also this is a way to protect our nature also. No pollution. And in terms of mental spirit or status, this is great. After riding your bike for 1 or 2 hours, you are a different person.
Yep.
Absolutely. You got fresh air, oxygen in the body, you are a different person. The other thing also that brings people together, that overcomes, transcends race, religion, barrier. I think this is something that we have to embrace, and we have to do education to make sure that people should understand this is a wonderful thing, and we got to do everything possible to make sure that we have space for it, and to make sure that people who are using bicycle, they can do that safely.
One of the things that came out in conversation with some of the Manhattan Borough President candidates last night was, you know, we have these huge fights to build these projects, but then once they're in, they're very popular. And that was true in Prospect Park West for sure. We're not having some of the same fights for some streets, but I think like if we try to take 4th Avenue up through downtown to the bridges, or we try to build, you know, bike lanes out into residential areas, we will have some of those fights. So, you know, you think your leadership can frame those things differently so that the fights are less, or that you can say, look, let us try it and, you know, you'll see the benefit. Give it some time, give it a chance.
Let me tell you one thing. You probably agree with me. Right now, we are facing several issues in New York City. People are fighting against each other when they were not supposed to fight, when they were supposed to work together to resolve the situation. And I think that, you know, that the reason why I want to go through education again. I want to mention education again. What is education? Inform people about the real situation. Inform people about the benefit of each element, and encourage them to work together to resolve issues. By fighting each other, we are not going nowhere. I think also we have to fight in different areas about several projects and several topics, and we have to fight about bike lane, about cycling. I think honestly, I'm not going to say that I want this, I want that, I'm going to do this. I think that we got to bring people together, doing awareness, education, understanding. Because when we understand each other and we make the study, we take a time to reflect on the situation, we may realize, you know what, this is not as bad as I thought. Let me try it, or let me do that. That's what I will have to do. Make sure I spend time to bring people together, to do awareness, to do education, to make people understand exactly what we have to do for the benefit of this community. Because I'm telling you, and you know that, we need to protect our nature, we need to protect our community, and also with the situation, so many cars, there's no way some of the time to go from one point to another point. When you are driving certain time, I used to drive from Flatbush and Church Avenue, from my district to downtown to Manhattan, probably 25 minutes or 30 minutes. Now, I'm telling you, some of the time, you know, it takes me time. But I saw people riding the bicycle, passing me like that, so quick. And I think we got to sit down and take a moment to reflect on many issues and see how we can resolve it together.
Yeah, we really don't go all that far in New York. Things are close together. It should be a great biking town. Council member and candidate for Brooklyn Borough President, Mathieu Eugene, thank you so much for your thoughts. We really appreciate you being here tonight. We wish you all the best on the campaign trail.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Thank you again. All right. We have a few more candidates still to come, and we are pleased to be joined now by candidate for Brooklyn Borough President, Pearlene Fields. Pearlene Fields has spent over 20 years working in business administration at nonprofit organizations like the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation and a number of the United Nations agencies. She's an activist and fundraiser with a variety of grassroots education, housing, and shelter initiatives. She's talked on the campaign trail about safe bike lanes. So if you want to just take it away and tell us, you know, what that looks like to you and how you would approach it as Brooklyn Borough President, we can dive right in.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here tonight. I've seen the issue from both sides. I'm both a driver and I have a bicycle that I ride. So I know when I ride my bicycle, I'm pretty much scared because I've been on the road and they almost knock me down. So I would go on the sidewalk to be safe. And I got a ticket for what do they call it? Quality of life. So you have to choose. Yeah, you have to choose either the quality of life or losing your life, and that's not good at all either. And I've been driving where I almost, hit a bicycle person because the lane is too small. So that's not good either. So we need to make it like put together a task force or something where we make it so that we can determine how wide to make the streets and have the public input as well so that we can make sure it's not like choosing either or. We can try and make it so that there is space for parking and the protected barrier is there so that you're not afraid to ride on the street itself where you should be, so because I've seen a few of them where the barrier was there and it looked much better as opposed to just the paint where sometimes the cars park in the spot and takes away from the bike lanes as well. So that's not good either. So it defeats the purpose. So I think we need to find a way where we can coexist and make it safer for everyone, because you can't be riding a bike and you're kind of trying to concentrate where you're going, and this person who's driving could give a flat hooey if they knock you out the way, and as far as they're concerned you're just in the way. That's not good at all. So I would like to see a situation where there are protected with the concrete protected lanes for everyone, so this way they're safe and we don't have to get on the sidewalk and risk, hitting the people on the sidewalk and risk their quality of life. So, that's kind of what my taking on the situation, because as someone who's done both out there, it can be a little scary, both driving and riding a bicycle.
Yeah, no, it's a point that doesn't get made enough, which is that if we give everybody their own space on the street, it can be less stressful, not just for the cyclist or the pedestrian, but for the car drivers as well, because most drivers don't want to hit anybody. You don't always know that in Brooklyn. Yeah, so that's interesting because this is the map of protected bike lanes in Brooklyn. Some of them are very, very old, going back to the 1800s. It doesn't cover a lot of the borough. And most of the stuff that's really constructed to be separate is on the waterfronts and, goes back quite a while, except for a little bit of stuff up in the northern part that's newer. But, thoughts on, I don't know if you've ever been on like the Jamaica Bay, Belt Parkway or other, Eastern Parkway, Ocean Parkway types of bike paths. But, there are planning groups in the city talking about we need to do more of those. We need to build rather than paint. But we build really slowly and really expensively in New York. So are those kinds of things on your radar to change and address?
Yeah, and what I do kind of like a little bit when I went on was by Prospect Park, where they have the middle part is I can't explain it, like where it's switched and there's no cars there. That little space the way they do it, like when you're crossing the street between the library and going across. You know what I mean? Yeah, sure. I like to see more of those happening.
Right, where you move the parking off the curb and then you create this other space.
Yeah,
like on Flatbush. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess a little more of those if we can in certain areas, because it's safer and it's just more smooth, as far as, and they still get lights, for stopping and starting, just like the cars. Right. So, I like some of those, along with the protective barriers with the concrete, a little bit of each, depending on the neighborhood, because I know you can't tear down the buildings to widen every street, but where you can, we can try it. But for where you can't, we can do some of that. We have to get creative about it,
Yeah, I mean, one of the problems we have so far in the city is those parking protected bike lanes work pretty well when you move the parked cars over and they become the barrier. But like here, we have another street in Brooklyn where there isn't enough room for that. So we just have these little plastic sticks and the cars just drive over them or through them. And, we really need to be more robust than that. This is kind of a signature, de Blasio administration bike lane where they're trying to have it both ways, and it's not safe and it doesn't help people bicycle. Yeah, they basically bent over a lot of them where the cars have, and they're sitting down, so they're not helping anyone. Yeah, I know. No, I know, and they have to spend money replacing them all the time. That's crazy. That's what they need to do. They need to get out there, physically get out there and see what's working and what's not working, and do more of what's working and change what isn't working. So this way it's safer for everyone. And everyone, the people who drive the cars don't have to feel like they're being left out because there's no parking and the bike lane is taking up too much room. We need to be able to see what's working to make it safe for everyone and more inclusive for everyone, Yeah, I mean, at some point there is some limitation on space, and somebody's going to get mad if their parking space is taken away, and somebody else is going to get mad if the parking space that was turned into a bike lane becomes a parking space. again. So, one of the places this plays out in New York is in community boards. And the borough president can shape the community boards. The borough president can exert leadership over the boards and can pick who they want to bring into the board. So, there's a lot of talk about making the boards more diverse. So I'm curious about how you think about that. And there's also research showing car owners are really overrepresented on boards throughout the city. So I don't know how you think about that and how you would, how you would approach some of these conflicts and decisions through the lens of the boards and appointing the boards.
Yeah, I'm actually a member of Community Board 17, so I got a little bit of idea of that. And I think the problem is a lot of people don't know that they can participate on the community boards. Like me, myself, I didn't realize that growing up that was a possibility. I grew up here in Flatbush. And so we need to do more outreach in order to get the people onto the community boards. We need to let them know that it's not just for homeowners. It's not just for, business type folks. It's for everyone who lives in the community. And this way we can get more people, because in some areas, there's not enough, diversity as far as people of color, not enough diversity, it depends on which area it is. There's not enough LGBTQ community members on the board. So we need to do more outreach. So this way they know it's time, because the application go out every year. So they need to let people know when the application is released instead of just putting it on their website. And this way they have a chance to apply to be on the board and they can participate, So if they don't know that it's there for them, they won't be able to go on them.
So you would really do an education campaign about the boards and what they are?
Yes, because we really do need to diversify. I mean, in some of the boards, they got all of this fancy stuff going on, and then some of the boards have the bare minimum. And because we're depending on who's on there, they're just there to just be there, taking up space, and they're not going to do that much for the community. So we need to get more people on there who's not just there to worry about their house, but actually the whole community, and then we can get things done. And so that means reaching out to more people who want to see the communities get uplifted, basically. So more outreach needs to happen.
I'm curious how you've seen that sort of dynamic on your own board, when it comes to street projects. I mean, I'm sure you've seen DOT come in and propose things.
Yeah, we had a few people come in and propose a few things, and I'm a renter myself. I don't own because I can't afford it, but I've noticed that it leans heavy towards the homeowners. So we basically do everything to benefit the homeowners because that's who's on the board. So like to give you an example, when I first got on there, they just received a large donation, approval of funds for his community center. They was calling it the Shirley Tilden Community Center. And there was a lot of outreach and talk about it, and they were going to build it in this open lot. And it was too near homes, and the homeowners basically quashed it. They quashed millions of dollars coming into the community because they want a community center near their homes. But the people who would have taken advantage of that would have been the renters, but they didn't get their voice heard because they're not on the board, so they didn't know what was going on. Right. So that's why we need more people who it affects directly to be involved. Yeah. So we know there are bike owners who bike and want to see more bike lanes. They need to join the community board so this way they can have their voices heard.
Mm-hmm. Have you seen that play out on street issues and street design or transportation proposals in the board?
I haven't yet because we've mainly been getting building up zoning buildings and developer stuff. Okay,
fair enough. Pearlene, any further thoughts on protected bike lanes, bikes in general, in your sort of policy world and your approach to being borough president?
Yeah, I do think we need to pick better places for the city bikes because there's some areas where they get used a lot, and there's some areas where they don't really get touched. So we need to focus. Do some kind of study to see where we can best have them where they'll be used, because we don't want them there just to be, collecting dust. Right. And we want to make sure that everyone is getting a chance to participate in that particular program, because it's a good program if you don't have a bike. Not everyone owns a bike in New York City. Right. Because you need transportation or a car. So I would like to see more of that happening. And like I said, more protective barriers, because I want to ride my little bike. Now I'm just walking onto the train until I get to the park area, and then I go into the park because I'm scared to be on the street. I don't want to get hit. So I want to see more protective, park on bike lanes. So this way I can ride my little bike with my little pink helmet and get there without issue, But the original my concern was to be able to ride it back and forth to work. But I'm scared to go over the bridges and stuff like that because I don't know if someone's going to hit me. So I would like to see more protections in that area along those lines.
Great. Yeah, I mean, look, there's more protected bike lanes in Manhattan. So once you made it through Brooklyn, you'd be okay probably, but you got to still get to the bridge, right? And
You got to get out of Brooklyn first.
yeah. Pearlene Fields, nonprofit administrator, community activist, candidate for borough president. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Thank you for your time, and all the best during the campaign.
Thank you.
It's ticking down,
Good
right?
evening, everyone.
Next month.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, bye.
Okay. I thought I saw Antonio Reynoso log in. Yep, there he is.
I'm here, John. I was just putting on my
All right.
Brooklyn hat.
I know, right.
I figured I'd get cute. This is a bike forum, but wanted to say hi, John. I hope you're doing well.
Yeah, you too, Antonio. No, I wanted to bring mine too, but mine's from the 90s. It's pretty beat.
Oh man, those are the good ones, man. This is my second one. I try to collect all the colors and I try to get through it. We'll see.
Yeah, you got the world championship stripes on there, right?
Yeah,
yeah. Let me introduce you before we get talking. Antonio Reynoso represents the City Council's 24th district. Is that right? No, that's not right.
Yeah, 34th Council District. Yep.
Oh, 34th. I guess a typo. Okay. Covering Williamsburg, Bushwick, some adjacent areas. He's chair of the sanitation committee, where he worked out a landmark agreement to change commercial waste pickup in a way that's going to really reduce truck traffic on our streets. He's a bike commuter, a bike rider for just getting out there and riding. He's been helping us work on this problem where we have nice wide bike lanes, even where the barrier is better than the one in this picture. The city won't block it off because this big, gigantic truck-sized street sweepers have to get up there. And we were just starting to crack that issue open before the pandemic happened and threw the budget into turmoil. We are going to get back on that and we're going to fix that. But as candidate for borough president, Antonio, you've talked about a fully interconnected, protected bike lane network across Brooklyn. Tell us, what that looks like to you. We have our map of what it is today. That's the protected network only. See all that white space there. Tell us, what you would do in Borough Hall to make that look a lot better.
Yeah. Thank you so much, John. And thank you everyone that's here listening. John, I also want to point out that I'm also the author and creator of the Outdoor Dining Bill, which really allowed for us to continue this idea of breaking car culture. It comes from showing people what the alternatives to single vehicle use and parking spaces for an individual car can be transformed into. And when you transform it into something like open and outdoor dining, it just opens up the conversation about other things, including cycling. Look, the protected bike network, I think where we got to get to, and where I think most urban cities or cities in all over the country have to get to, is reducing the over-reliance on vehicles and making sure that we have protected bike lanes. We need to start again with the breaking car culture. It comes from making sure people equate bike lanes more to sidewalks than they do streets, right? It's figuring out a way to really start separating this conversation that we are to share the streets with vehicles as opposed to have an extended sidewalk with pedestrians. So the only way to do that is to separate it the way we have like an Ocean Parkway. If you're heading down to Coney Island and want to get to the beach and you're in Williamsburg, that's the street you're taking. And that parkway is an example of what you have to make people accustomed to, normalize that. And it is exactly that. It is more akin to the sidewalk than it is to a street. So when I think about this bike network, the first thing is informing community boards. I fought against my community boards countless times. I fought against it for bike lanes across my district. I'm an avid bike rider and care deeply about these things, but I don't want to have to fight the community boards. I just want them to be able to understand the value of bike lanes and it not be this conversation about an introduction to gentrification, as opposed to an economic development driver protecting deliveristas who were just out there fighting for better pay from these apps, alternatives to transportations that are inexpensive. for people that want to get to work in a more ideal way, and that, you know, they don't want to take a car, and so forth. So for me, it's just about putting people in the community board that understand this, informing the community board through like lessons, classes, or something more about what it does, and then ultimately figuring out a way to expand it citywide. Well, borough-wide at first, but borough-wide. I'm a council member, so I still got my citywide hat on, but borough-wide, let's try that.
Fantastic. I mean, what about, you know, you mentioned Ocean Parkway, and one of the things that really sort of jumps at you on this map is a lot of the big stuff there is like more than 100 years old, or pre-World War II, or, you know, 1960s maybe, with the Shore Parkway. How do we get more construction going? You know, it's kind of, you know, when we started doing protected bike lanes back in like 2008, the world was coming to us and saying, wow, look at how you're doing that fast. Now, like Paris and London are building real constructed stuff in a couple of years. And we're still trying to get stuff on the street that we planned back in like 2010, in terms of actual physical construction. How can the borough president help with that? Can we, you know, and you know, one of the reasons we do plastic and paint is because that's DOT's medium. They don't really rebuild streets. Can we get New York to rebuild streets in a real way?
You got to take this. Yes, I'm sorry. I got some kids in the background. I apologize for that.
We're all working from home.
Look, I think a lot of it has to do with, look, we have people here on this forum. I remember when I used to be the only person that was talking about this. Now we have candidates from not only borough president, but throughout Brooklyn, talking about how much they care about cyclists and how much they care about bike lanes. You know, a lot of it, I think, is just jockeying to try to get the endorsement of folks that care deeply about bikes, because we see the fight happen in the city council and in these community boards constantly, and council members continuously, you know, back away from that fight in an effort, you know, to score political points or save themselves from political backlash. But I think that's a part of it. John, we have to put the right transportation commissioner in place, more of like a Janess Khan like reputation and type. This is about safety. This is about infrastructure that is absolutely necessary and sustainable for a growing city, and be unapologetic and deliberate about putting bike lanes where they need to be, and doing it the right way. I think we have a lot of potential with a lot of these mayoral candidates that could take that approach, and start thinking about bike lanes not as something that, you know, that they're gonna the parking or driving community is going to dictate, but instead the rest of us are. And also, we just need more voices. How many people speak about cycling the way we do, the way I do, right? And I think that's important too. I'm going to use the bully pulpit. I'm going to get rid of all the cars in Borough Hall. I want my police detail to be on bikes. I'm going to get to Borough Hall on a bike, because it is the primary means of transportation that I have, and so forth. I just think it's about electing the right people. It started with city council when there was only 2 people back in the day. And then I got in there and I came in with like 8 people. And now it's like, again, people are like fighting each other to get to where we are. I think you got to continue that work on the ground, and then allow for us to kind of lead, and start changing that conversation about, it's not, we do want you to do it quickly. We want you to do it right. And we can do both if you just make a commitment. And this mayor thought that being quick and painting, you know, putting Kermit on the streets, is gonna succeed or get us to where we need to get to, as opposed to what should really be happening is a long-term plan for protected and separate bike lanes in the city of New York that are more akin to like Ocean Parkway than not.
Do you have particular projects you would want to become champion for coming into Borough Hall?
Yeah, so the first one is Atlantic Avenue. I feel like Atlantic Avenue was built by a 4-year-old that put Legos together, and it goes up one way, it goes down another. It's a highway halfway through Atlantic Avenue. I mean, halfway past like Pennsylvania Ave, and then it becomes like a small street getting closer to Barclays, where it becomes almost a highway again. We have an elevated train station. It's about tearing the whole thing down and rebuilding it and using it as a model for a street redesign that the whole world looks to. It's like, look at what Brooklyn did with one of its main arteries from east to west. And it's one thing that I want to bring all the council members, all the reps from state, federal, and city government want to put in for a grant from the federal government and really rethink this dangerous street for everyone, including drivers. It is one of the deadliest streets and the most crashes in all of Brooklyn. Is one street that I want to look at. And you guys already know the ideal situation for me would be to tear down the BQE and not have it come back, period. Finally get rid of like the Robert Moses monkey on our back and really like think about a throughway from north to south that is more respective of a city of the future and not a city of the past.
Thanks. We've talked a little bit about bike parking with other folks and, connecting up the bike and train system better. We have in Brooklyn a bike parking company that's trying this stuff.
Yeah.
And the city can't seem to get out of its way. I mean, how can we do better in that regard? I mean, they want to build freestanding stuff that's cheap and quick and fast and modular that, can keep working cyclists from having their bikes stolen, help people who don't have room in their apartments, and help people who need to be in an office for 8 or 9 hours.
Yeah. Look, John, I think I'm on my third bike in 4 years.
Oh no.
Yeah, and bike theft is something that just isn't talked about because some people might think that bikes are inexpensive or it's just but it's a tragic issue that we need to have a conversation about. If you want people to ride their bikes, you want to make sure that, in our small apartments in the city of New York, and the fact that there's no mandatory space for bike parking in a lot of these buildings, that we find a safe and secure way to park, to park our vehicles. But it also needs, our bikes, but it also comes down to the network, the type of network that would allow us to do that. And right now, the city of New York has a very, an easily, with enough lawyers, you don't even need a lot of lawyers. A couple of lawyers in a room, we can figure out a way to allow for these bike parking, these sealed bike parking structures to exist throughout our city, and it'd be actually profitable for the person or the group that's actually putting it together and cost the city absolutely nothing outside of space. And the one thing that we know we have because of the amount of parking that exists in the city is space. So I want to give an example. I would love to know if I'm going to see if Borough Hall can be one of the sites where we can put one of those units. Mm-hmm. I've already know, we know the owner, so we want to, one of the founders, and we want to have a real serious conversation about this. But look, that it has to work on both sides. We will need the protected bike parking, and they need a business model that is sustainable. And I think they have a good idea on how to do that. We're just getting in our own way. I personally think it has a lot more to do than the lawyers. And it's just that the city is just never truly committed to its bike network and the infrastructure necessary to sustain it. And again, we need more people at the top level in higher positions outside of the city council that are going to promote this. And I do want to say, I don't want to throw too much shade at Polly Trottenberg, who I think, tried her best. I think could have done a lot better, but just want, more of the unapologetic Jeanette Sadi-Khan kind of like people in place. And I guarantee Jeanette would have solved this and would have just put bike parking wherever she
I guarantee it also. I guarantee it also because I saw it. You've also talked, Antonio, about the need for comprehensive planning. We go at these things in such a piecemeal way in terms of development. How does transportation or bikes and the kind of vision you're painting fit there, and how can you help shape our streets through that process as well?
Yes. So John, look, our city was planned and built hundreds of years ago, and the plan that existed back then is kind of the plan that it holds solid right now. We're like a grid city, built for vehicles now, that whose goal is to bring everyone to the central business district, and kind of have that be like the center of all of New York City. I personally think it was good planning back then. It's just to not have a comprehensive plan since then has made it so that this city, it's running out of space. and has, again, this over-reliance on how to get to the central business district, when it's getting very expensive to build out track and public transportation outside of buses, and this non-protective or safe way to get around on cycling. And look, it's about comprehensive planning. I think there's a little bit happening in downtown Brooklyn, but there's no reason why somebody from Bay Ridge or somebody from Canarsie needs to come out to the central business district to get any work done, to buy anything, to purchase anything, to come to any city agency like the DMV, the great DMV, right? Like, there's no reason why people have to come out this far to do any of that. Our city, if built comprehensively, if we think about every single neighborhood and the needs of that neighborhood and being able to build around that structure, I think we get a lot more accomplished. And in that, in a comprehensive plan, we can see what our city's going to look like in 10 years. And we can start planning and making sure that the capital budget is aligned to the needs of those communities, then we start talking about, Canarsie, Bay Ridge, Midwood, having an express bus lane or express bus area that is, completely separated from traffic, that can get there in half the time, to the train station that could be necessary to get them to downtown Brooklyn or some other area where they can focus on. It's just bad. I think DCP has done a terrible job of being able to do something comprehensively. We're doing piecemeal approach, the same thing with our bike lanes. And I think at some point, somebody has to say, take a step back, spend a year or two thinking long-term, and then let's get to it. You wouldn't manage your business this way, but they're managing the city that way. And that's a big problem for me. That long-term plan, lack of long-term planning is a huge problem for me. So I'm doing that, I'm going to do that as borough president. I'm going to be instituting a comprehensive planning Brooklyn. I'm going to allow for every single community board to kind of tell us what they see their neighborhood looking like for the next 10 years. And there's going to be certain goals that are going to be attached to their planning, like housing, like bike lanes, like schools, sewer infrastructure. Like, what is it that your neighborhood needs? And let's start talking about it now, so that in 10 years, you're not going to be surprised that we're adding these things, because it's something you've committed to or is on paper, and you could be expecting that in the next 10 years.
Yeah, I like that. And that sounds like that's a way we can get the real money into building out like greenways in the streets.
Yes.
Fantastic. Antonio Reynoso, city council member, candidate for Brooklyn Borough President. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts tonight. And, really all the best in the campaign in the remaining week.
Thank you so much, John. Thank you so much. Appreciate you taking the time out and having me here. Very happy to be here.
Thank
Good
you.
job.
We'll see you on the street. Okay. We are now ready to bring on Joanne Simon, our next candidate.
Hello,
Hi, Joanne.
how are you, John? Good to see you again.
Nice to see you. Joanne represents the 52nd District in the New York State Assembly, and that covers downtown Brooklyn, Carroll Gardens, Gowanus, parts of Park Slope, probably leaving out a neighborhood, but you get the idea. Joanne has been an activist in the city going back a while, served, a chair of neighborhood associations, Borum Hill Association. I worked with Joanne back questioning the idea of the BQE and its impact on Brooklyn and downsizing it way back before it, became a crisis point and something that was a talking point for a great many more people. She worked on trying to get some transportation sensibility to the whole Atlantic Yards development. She's active in Democratic politics in a variety of clubs. Too many to go over, but Joanne also helped push through a traffic calming plan for the downtown Brooklyn area, one of the few places where we physically narrowed streets in the city. And unfortunately, we haven't continued to do that. But Joanne is now a candidate for Brooklyn Borough President. You've talked a lot about being passionate. And I should say also, Joanne is an attorney and activist for disability rights. And I worked with her on transit issues in that regard. You've written about being passionate about transportation generally and increasing use of bikes. So how would you sort of approach that and all these other sort of related things we've mentioned as Borough President of Brooklyn? Oh, nice graphic of Borough Hall, by the way.
Thank you. Thanks, John. You know, it's great to see you. It's been a long time, actually, that we've been working together on these issues. You know, I think one of the things that I would say that about, you know, bike lanes, for example, is that we need more of them and we need them to be better protected bike lanes. Because a real problem we have is the fact that, you know, if you slap some paint on the ground, nobody pays attention to it except for the people that are trying to use the bike lane, but there's always somebody parked in it, kind of thing. And you know that story. So it's really about enforcement, but it's also about just protecting the bike lane, because if you don't protect it physically, that's kind of the idea behind traffic calming. It's behavior modification for drivers, right? If you feel like the street is more narrow, you slow down. If you need to swing more widely to make a turn because there's a neck down, you slow down to make those turns. And, you know, the protected bike lanes are something very similar. They physically will keep you from, you know, moving into the bike lane and parking in the bike lane and that sort of thing.
Well,
So
ideally, yes, but
and that's a lot of money. It's not all going to be from the borough president, but the borough president can do a lot to help shape that and to support, you know, protected bike lanes where they are most needed. And I think we'll need to work together to prioritize, you know, where are those places where we need those protected bike lanes built out where they aren't currently, and where we need them improved.
So you know that you've been in a million of these community conversations and battles. So how can the borough president help sort of sort that out? Because, you know, today we do this trench warfare at the community boards where we're fighting inch by inch, block by block. And, you know, can the borough president frame this in a way that solicits input, but says, look, we're going to do this. We just need your practical knowledge on how best to do it.
Well, you know, I think that, first of all, the borough president can have their goals for the borough. I think the borough president needs to lead in a couple of ways, right? Number one, you need to be about this in just the way you talk about these issues, right? So they're not an afterthought. It's like disability rights. It can't be an afterthought, right? It needs to be upfront. It needs to be centered. It's like our children need to be centered. Women need to be centered. You know, transportation and, you know, non-car transportation needs to be centered and facilitated. But it is also about that advocacy with other borough presidents and with the city hall, because frankly, the money is really going to come from the DOT, or it will come through, for example, the federal infrastructure money, which I am, you know, focused on quite a bit. And, you know, we want to make sure that Brooklyn gets its fair share of that, but we also want to know that we direct it in a way that serves our goals, right? And so that's a goal that, you know, I think it's about leadership from the top and the way you have these conversations, and then the way you bring people in to have those conversations. One of the things Howard Golden did years ago was he would have these task forces. In fact, the Downtown Brooklyn Traffic Calming Task Force we got because Mayor Giuliani's transportation commissioner said something really, really stupid to Senator Montgomery. I wrote a letter and embarrassed Giuliani. He got Howard Golden to, you know, he supported it through his mayor's office. Howard Golden put together a task force, and that was the first traffic calming project in the entire city. And it was because we could have sort of, you know, seized the moment and took advantage of that. And so, you know, you don't know what those inflection points will be, what those opportunities will always be, but you need to be aware of them and you need to know how to take advantage of them when they present themselves. And so, you know, we do need to do a lot of driver education. We need to do a lot of pedestrian education. We need to educate City Hall as well.
Fantastic. You know, that all sounds great and also essential. Joanne, are there particular bike projects or corridors you would want to address or champion as BP?
Yeah, you know, a couple of things that, you know, I would focus on. Obviously, you know, I know that Antonio mentioned Atlantic Avenue, which, as you know, at parts of Atlantic Avenue, the design speed is 70 miles an hour. Right. And we've battled with DOT about that for years. So yes, parts of Atlantic Avenue for sure would be easy to do in some ways, and other parts would be much more difficult to do, and that would take a comprehensive approach. But there's also, creating a protected bike lane over the Verrazano Narrows Bridge, which will help a lot, right? And those areas in downtown Brooklyn, it is constant battle. And I can't tell you how many times I've talked to the police about this. Their vehicles are parked in bike lanes, or they're parked in other places where they're not supposed to be parked. So we have to figure out what to do. Do the cops need all these vehicles? What do? We keep taking away space from their ability to have off-street space, right? So they're parking on the streets. There's got to be a way that we can get people together to do that on something of less than a precinct by precinct basis. But certainly, the 84th, which is the way to the Brooklyn Bridge, the way to the Manhattan Bridge, has a huge problem with this. Downtown Brooklyn, the vehicular traffic is 50% is just through traffic going over the bridges. And in fact, now the bike traffic is through traffic going over the bridges, which is as it should be, but we have to make that safe for people. Right. So, obviously I'm a supporter of, taking a lane of the Brooklyn Bridge for a bike lane as well. But it's the connectivity. It's getting.
Yeah, that's just going to exacerbate. That'll just exacerbate the issues in downtown.
Yeah, it will. But
right. It's fascinating to look at the map. One of the things the de Blasio folks did do was sink this big corridor on 4th Avenue, but it stops at Atlantic and Flatbush. So it doesn't quite get you, through the key part there, or to it, even if you're destined for downtown Brooklyn.
And that's a tough place for anybody. Flatbush, 4th and Atlantic is just.
No, absolutely. But there are ways to route that bike lane up to bridges.
Sure.
Any thoughts about?
Hear your thoughts about that.
Okay. No, I have plenty. One of the other things that really jumps out of you on this map is that some of the big corridors are like 100 years old or older, go back to mid 20th century, like the Shore Parkway or Jamaica Bay Greenway. And I don't know if you have thoughts about greenways and sort of trying to get the construction really cranked up there, because you mentioned federal infrastructure money. We may have an opportunity here, and I feel like greenways hit jobs, community open space, protected bike lanes, supporting the bike boom. But no one's ever really tried to tackle like connecting Jamaica Bay to the Shore Parkway through Coney Island, but we've always had these two greenway pieces that are great in themselves, but they don't link up. And they also could connect to Ocean Parkway if you did that.
Right. So, well, I certainly am supportive of connecting those things. As you know, I was supportive of the Greenway before they were calling it the Greenway. It was the original proposal was a Greenway Blueway. I don't know if you remember that. It was
a
time ago, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm, for a while there, we were making a lot of progress, and now it seems sort of stuck in some particular areas. And we do need to, sort of take pull back and take a look at where those pinch points are, where those barriers are, where we're not able to make those connections, and figure out a way to do that. And I think that's really where you have to, sort of take the lead, get together with people with expertise, people who are stakeholders, people who are bike riders who understand that, roll up your sleeves and figure out a way to connect the dots. That was something that the Greenway folks did very, very well. They were very persistent, very methodical, and figured out how to be in partnership with all of those entities, even the ones that they had difficulty with, because they needed to make progress.
Right.
And they had a really good perspective on working that out. And I think that is something that we need to bring back to the bikeway effort.
Right. A lot of borough president candidates in different boroughs across town are talking about how they would sort of approach the community board appointment process. What do you say about that?
Well, I think, like a lot of people, I realize that the community boards, many of them don't adequately represent the people that they are there to be representing, right? We have community boards that are very demographically dissimilar to the communities that they represent. And some of them have had management that has been around a long, long time. and it hasn't learned from experience, let's say, right? And then there are others that are much better managed. So I think we need to look at those community boards and really assess, for example, what's working and what isn't, and kind of why, right? Because like a school, it's about the community, right? What is the culture in that community board? How do we change that culture? We now will have term limits instituted for community boards. And that is an opportunity for some of those people that everybody knows are no longer functional, but the elected officials don't want to take them off the community board because they don't want to make them feel bad, or, maybe they're very elderly and, what have you. And I've been around a lot of community boards with those kinds of situations. So the term limits gives us an opportunity, but it's also about creating a process where we recruit, we educate people about community boards, about what they are and what they're not. They are not neighborhood associations. They have a charter mandated function. They can be a place where neighborhood associations can bring their issues to educate them about those issues so that the community board can advocate in a way that it can. And we also need to make sure that we have it be much more balanced racially, gender, LGBTQ, people with expertise in various areas. I don't think you need a community board of all of all transportation engineers, but you do need to have people with expertise. And the other big thing, of course, that I've always talked about is the need for expertise for the community boards to use as resources, right? If you are a community board member and you're a teacher, or you're a guy who works with Bell Telephone, which is no longer in existence, but you know what I'm saying. What do you know about an EIS, right? And they're huge and they're long. How do you read them? How do you read between the lines? How do you know to listen for the answer that the developer is giving you that isn't really an answer, and how to respond to that? So they need help. And I think that it's that's something that I have been talking about for 20 years and will do as borough president, and make sure that our community boards have the support and the resources they need to do the difficult work we're asking them to do as volunteers.
I mean, several of the boards in Brooklyn are known, pretty notoriously as places where bike lanes go to die. I mean, do you think the city should be sort of letting them veto pieces of a network like that?
Well, no, but I don't know that they actually are able to veto it, right? They may come out against it, for example. They may find ways to do that, but they don't really have the authority to veto. Right?
No, but at least DOT grants them that authority and runs away in many cases.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I would say that communications is a big issue. So, for example, in my district, we pilot everything. Right. So bike share, car share, anything share is going to happen in my area, which is very congested and very progressive. But still, the lack of communication has been problematic sometimes. And so when, they roll something out or they change something and there's no communication, people who are actually supporters are unhappy because they didn't have any expectation. I think this goes to the community board issue. We need to communicate to people much better about these things and not rely on just a community board meeting. Because the fact is, nobody goes to the community board meetings except for the geeks like you and me and the people who are on the community board. So we need to, in fact, find a better way to get information out to the public that will really communicate what it is that we're about, what it is that needs to happen, what are the pluses and minuses, educate the public in a fundamentally different way. Right now, the city every agency has its own communications thing, and their real focus is like on the nuts and bolts of their agency. Right. And they're not doing that job, and they're not really equipped to do that job. So we need to fundamentally change that.
Interesting. Joanne, any further thoughts on bike-friendly Brooklyn and how you can, kind of facilitate that as borough president?
Well, I see many things through the lens of climate justice. And I think, bikes are part of that, right? It is part of the green economy. It is part of reducing, vehicle miles traveled and reducing congestion and cleaning the air. And I see that as sort of that model and that framework that is intergenerational and intersectional. Bike lanes aren't just about bike lanes. They're about many things. They're about health. They're about our environment. They're about the economy. They are those people who are riding bicycles to commute to work or because they're making their living on bicycles. And it will also, if we, engage with more progressive practices in that way. I am working with a woman who's got a platform where she's sort of taking small business products. You can order them on her platform. It's not Amazon, and they will get it to you in a day, right? And that kind of delivery is a great opportunity. It also supports local small businesses. It helps people, use the small businesses in their community, and it provides jobs. So I think we need to look at bike lanes as something other than a narrow issue. Because then it becomes something for people to fight over. And I think that we have to take it out of that realm. It's like congestion pricing. We need to get it out of that realm of people fighting over it and calling it a tax. We need to reframe that. And I think that that's what I will be working on as borough president and what I think I'm uniquely qualified to do.
Joanne Simon, State Assembly member, longtime activist on a broad range of issues, and now candidate for Brooklyn Borough President. Thank you for your time tonight, Joanne.
Thank you, John. Good to see you. Thank you all. Bye-bye. Thanks for the
Thanks.
opportunity.
And we have our final candidate of the evening with us, Bishop Lamar Miller Whitehead. Has been very active in programs to help incarcerated individuals re-entry into society. He's owned his own mortgage and real estate companies. Now he's a candidate for public office here in Brooklyn, running for borough president. Welcome, Bishop Whitehead. We're all about bikes and the fact that bike use is booming today in Brooklyn and the rest of New York. How would you facilitate, make safer, expand on that as borough president?
Well, John, thanks for having me here. And I guess we could use the quote, you saved the best for last, right?
Absolutely.
So, bicycles is dear to my heart because I'm from Brooklyn. I'm a Brooklynite. I come from the era of changing my own flat tires as a little kid, where you got to go buy the patches and put it up there, rip it off and burn it. So therefore you can ride your bike.
Okay.
So so it's very dear to me. And biking right now, I don't want to sound repetitive because I am last. And a lot of the candidates have said so many things.
Sorry, we want to hear it.
Okay, right. So, one of the main things that I want to do for bikes, right, is I want to make sure that the awareness and the respect level, right? When we look, I'm the candidate that's for the people. I'm the candidate that's not going to hit you with all the political and I know all of the politics, but I'm the candidate that your grandmother's going to say, hey, Pastor White is here. Come on and sit down. You can have a real conversation with him. That's the candidate I am. So I'm the candidate that's going to expound on protection. I'm not going to just say I'm going to protect you. Well, how am I going to do that, right? Potholes in Brooklyn are very traumatic and traumatizing, right? Driven up and down Eastern Parkway and through the streets, and even in the bike lanes, there are potholes. Sure. And there are a lot of bikes. They tumble over when they hit potholes, right? Cars hitting potholes, jumping the sidewalk. So therefore, when we talk about safety, right, we have to talk about in its totality, right? We have to make sure that the streets are prepared. Have you ever hit a pothole in your car and thought your engine fell out, right? Imagine a cyclist hitting that pothole, right? All you have is a helmet. They don't have the elbow pads or the knee pads, and you're going to go to the hospital. So I have to make sure, using the bully pulpit, that our streets, pavements are safe, right? We have to make sure that the garbage is cleaned up in the bike lanes, right? Sanitation is key, right? We can't just push everything in the bike lane and say, as long as it's not in the streets, it's all right. No, people that are riding bikes are human beings too, and they have less protections in the car. So when we talk about protection, we have to have the mindset and the ideology as to us riding a bike, right? Speed cameras are key, right? We need more speed cameras. We need cameras, and most specifically in school districts and where bike lanes are, right? We need to make sure that the laws, I want to push that the laws become harder, right? As far as I want to have a task force, because I always sit with the NYPD, the chiefs of police, and I talk because I'm very community oriented. I'm into gun violence, I'm into community gang violence, I'm into rehabilitation of the community. So I'm always talking with the NYPD. And one of the things that I've already been talking about is to make sure that there are harsher penalties for drivers due to the fact of pedestrians walking across the street and bike riders, right? Why? Just because they don't have no protection and they're not in a car, that you guys are not respected. That, like, come on, right? And I think that if we level up with more harsher penalties and we echo it, then I think that the bicycle riders will be more appreciated, because they're going to know that they're protected by the law. Because candidates, we can all throw protection. How? Are we going to sit with the NYPD and say, you know what? I need a task force in this area because cyclists are calling and they are complaining about the way this street interweaves and how these cars are swerving, right? So just like we have task forces when in Brownsville they have a shooting and then they come out with a big light, boom, and everybody's under the light, right? Why can't we, right?
Yeah, you're cutting out a little bit. But hopefully under new management, the police will also stop parking their own cars in the bike lanes, and we're having those issues. And we're hoping, we thought we might get that with Vision Zero under Mayor de Blasio. It wasn't the case. Do you have any specific projects or other types of initiatives, in transportation and street management, street design that you would specifically pursue in Brooklyn?
Yes. Now, one of the things that you said about the police officers parking a bike lane, they sometimes they act like rebels. They just park where they want to park. They don't care, and I am the candidate that's going to step to it and not be afraid to step to the police officers. Why? My father was beaten, strangled to death by 16 police officers because of the color of his skin. So my entire platform is systemic racism, right? No matter what it is. And I believe that cyclists have been put in a place where they have not have equal rights. And that's what systemic racism is all about. My father, because of the color of his skin, he's no longer here. 40 years ago, June 14th, I was only 6 weeks old, and they beat him and strangled him to death. He was the first I can't breathe. So I understand, using that theory and that ideology, how cyclists can feel when they're not respected, right? So police officers, you can't park there either, right? You can't park there either. If it's not an emergency and you don't have your sirens on, you have to move, right? What makes you better, right? Also, the signs, right? They need more signs. The plan is to make sure that bike riders have awareness, right? We need more signs, right? We need to make sure that I would like to change what they call the pictures of the hands, right? With the signals, I would like to see more bikes. I actually like that. I actually like that. Where the bikes, it says green. That means the bikes can go. That means you can't go, car. That means, so I want you guys to have your own world, right? I want to make sure that you're secure with your own world. My grandmother always taught me, she's going to be 106 years old tomorrow, right? We celebrate her birthday. So she always taught me, she says, people lie, numbers don't, right? So at the end of the day, that's what we have to do. We have to create change, right? We have to make sure that cyclists knows that they have rights. As of right now, they have a few rights that they know about. Signs, right? If we start to put up more signs throughout Brooklyn, right? Therefore, you're going to be more aware that cyclists have rights, just like a stop sign. If you go through a stop sign, you're going to be penalized. So therefore, if we have signs for cyclists, right? Therefore, the respect level is going to be more, and that becomes protection. I also like the idea of apps, creating a Brooklyn app. So therefore, just like we have maps and ways, right? We should have something like that for bikes, right? Mm-hmm. What's going on over here? Is it traffic over here for bicycles, right? Park. When we park over here, right? What's going on? Is it police commotion, right? What if there's not a lot of bike lanes in Brownsville. There's not a lot of bike lanes in East New York, right? So I want to set a plan where therefore equality is throughout Brooklyn, right? One of the reasons why cyclists are not respected and some drivers are not responding to them is because they live in neighborhoods of Brooklyn that they don't see them. So if you don't see them, how can you respect them or even know how to identify with them, right? So at the end of the day, I think that some of the disrespect to the cyclists comes from the not knowing who they are, right? And I think that we need to stretch out the platform throughout Brooklyn, right? Even if we believe that they don't ride bikes in Brownsville or ride bikes in East New York, or let's try it out, right? I want to set up an initiative where I fund bike training, right? That's another thing, right? How do you ride a bike, right? Brooklyn should have a training on how you ride a bike, right?
We do that at Bike New York.
Yes.
So we would love to work with you, when you're in office. Yeah. And we're trying to get that more and more built into the schools. But, we need help because we're in about 20 schools out of, 300, 400 middle schools.
Yeah, I did some research and I seen the hubs that you guys have, and that's what I'm talking about, connecting with you guys. Yeah. And make it a Borough President's Initiative, Borough Hall Initiative. That's what because I did a lot of research on you guys, and I know you guys doing a lot of great work. And being with Eric Adams, and I've been at his mentee for his both terms, and I watched him very closely as how he moved and understood how he moved, and I was just in awe of the different things that Brooklyn have to offer. So I would like, and this is real talk, I would like an initiative, right? Because I create initiatives. So with me dealing with the community, I created what we call a hospital initiative for the community. If your child want to be an ophthalmologist, radiologist, gynecologist, they get to shadow these doctors, right? I created a Brooklyn Chambers of Commerce initiative. I work with the Brooklyn Chambers of Commerce initiative, resume writing, bank account, starting your own bank account, financial literacy. So I create initiatives, and I want to create a bicycle initiative where therefore we know it comes through Borough Hall. So with you guys with us, right? And with you spearheading it and being so I'm going to have commissioners. I'm going to have commissioners over different initiatives, right? And I would love for you guys to be a commissioner hub. So therefore you can be a voice of the community. That's what Brooklyn is missing, right? We keep hearing the same old voices, the same old stories, right? And them little plastic bars, they all knocked down, John. They all knocked down. So
yeah, I know, man.
Who's repairing them?
I carry them around to press conferences now.
Right. Because at the end of the day, we have been so accustomed to voting for the same old voice because we're safe there. No, I'm the new voice. I'm the one that's going to donate my entire salary. I'm donating my entire salary. I'm the only candidate because I want the people to know that I'm rolling my sleeves up because there's blood on the streets. And it's my father's blood, right? And I don't want nobody else's blood on the streets, right? And I'm a bishop, I'm a pastor of 2 churches. So I know how to lead a flock. I know how to create movement. I understand how to make everybody happy as best as possible, right? And it's about community. It's about relationship. It's about relationship. And that's what we need to have.
Have you ever been out riding bikes with Eric Adams?
No, I haven't been with him. He
Does it a lot.
Yeah, he ride too crazy. So I'll go with my kids and them in the park, but you know, he want to ride on the streets. I gotta wait for me to become borough president to set some order, and then I'm gonna get up.
All right, now that's fair. That's totally fair. I got you. Anything else you want to get across to us here on Bike New York's Brooklyn Borough President Night?
Well, I just want to thank you guys for having me here, and giving me this opportunity. And if you guys don't remember anything, remember this, that Bishop Lamar Miller Whitehead, I'm the voice for the voiceless. I was illegally incarcerated, sent away to prison for 11 and a third to 13 to 34 years. And by the grace of God, I wrote my own motion and got out in 6 years. So I understand about inequality. I understand about rejection. I understand when you have a voice, but they minimize your voice, right? Just like cyclists, right? We the new kids on a bike, right? And we got these old cars and these big old trucks, and nobody want to listen to us. So I understand as I filed my motions and the judges rejected me. And I further know the reason why they rejecting me is because they got to get voted in. So how could they reverse themselves? And I had to go to a higher court. And just like you guys now, you go into a higher court. You got the opportunity and the understanding on how to use your voting rights now, right? Not picking the same voice, but picking a voice that sounds different, that you're going to take a chance with. Because I'm not out there trying to get different elected officials to endorse me. No, I want the streets to endorse me, because when it's time for me to step on their toes, when John, you come to me with an issue in a certain district, I'm saying, oh no, but they endorsed me. So we got to come a different way, John, because co-sign me so I can, no. I'm coming with the thunder, right? And I want you guys to understand that I am the voice for the voiceless. I'm going to be your next Brooklyn Borough President. You guys can find me at Whitehead, FORBK.com, Whitehead4BK.com. Thank you.
Bishop Whitehead, activist, entrepreneur, now candidate for Brooklyn Borough President. Thank you for your time. It's really interesting talking with you this evening. And I'm going to turn it back to my colleagues. Thanks everyone for participating. Thanks to all the candidates. Thanks to our audience. We'll be back and we'll have more forums going forward.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, John. And thank you very much to the Borough President candidates who took the time to join us this evening. I'd like to thank our audience, especially for supporting Bike New York. Your being here this evening means that we're on the right track, and I want you to consider supporting Bike New York, as well as supporting our free bike education program. So I've done a couple of things. I included a link to donate, and don't worry, any level of support we would absolutely welcome. But I also want you to know, in addition to that, we're really excited about a new initiative that we have, Million Mile May. Million Mile May is here, and it's Bike New York's free virtual cycling challenge. And we want you to be a part of that, where our goal is 1 million miles, and we're going to reach that, but only with your help. So feel free to participate, and the operative word is free. It's definitely free to participate. So I've dropped those links in the chat, and thank you so much. Thank you again, John. Really appreciated the conversation. Good night, everybody.
Night, folks. Thank you.
Good night. Continue to be well.
Thank you.